The day I almost gave up. Have you ever packed a suitcase in your mind before you actually packed it in real life? That was me. The day I almost gave up on my life in the United States did not look dramatic. There was no storm. No shouting. No movie soundtrack in the background. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning, gray and quiet, somewhere between my small apartment and the parking lot of the company where I worked. And yet, inside me, everything felt loud. I had been living and working in America for less than a year. On paper, it sounded impressive. Working in the U.S. Building a new life. Chasing the American dream. But inside, I felt like a silent version of myself. I understood meetings. I understood emails. I understood jokes, sometimes 5 seconds too late. But when it was my turn to speak, my mind went blank. If you're learning English right now, you might know that feeling. Your heart beats fast. Your brain knows the sentence in your native language. But in English? Nothing. Just fog. That morning, I sat in my car and whispered one sentence, I can't do this anymore. Not because America was cruel. Not because people were unkind. Actually, most people were patient. The problem was the voice in my head. The voice that said, you sound stupid. The voice that said, you will never be confident. The voice that compared my broken sentences to someone else's perfect grammar. Psychologists call this negative self-talk. Research from Stanford shows that when we repeat self-critical thoughts, our brain activates stress responses similar to physical danger. Your body doesn't know the difference between a tiger and a team meeting. To your nervous system, embarrassment feels like survival risk. So my body reacted. Sweaty hands. Tight chest. Avoid eye contact. Speak less. Smile more. Stay safe. And here's the strange thing. The more I avoided speaking English, the worse my fear became. Neuroscience explains this too. When we avoid discomfort, the brain learns that the discomfort must be dangerous. Avoidance strengthens fear. Exposure weakens it. But I didn't know that clearly back then. I only knew I was tired. Tired of translating in my head. Tired of rehearsing sentences before ordering coffee. Tired of saying sorry when someone spoke too fast. That Tuesday, I opened my phone and searched, how to build confidence in English speaking. The internet gave me thousands of tips. Speak more. Join groups. Think in English. Practice daily. It all sounded correct. It all sounded impossible. Because when you feel small, big advice feels heavy. Then something simple happened. In a short conversation that morning, my coworker asked, "How was your weekend?" Normally, I would say, "Good." Busy. End of conversation. Safe. Short. No risk. But I remembered something I read the night before. It said, confidence is not built in big moments. It is built in micro-brave actions. So instead of 2 words, I added one more. Good. Busy. Relaxing. 3 words. He smiled. Nice. What did you do? My brain panicked again. But instead of building a perfect sentence, I grabbed small pieces. I went hiking. First time. Very cold. Was it perfect English? No. Was it clear? Yes. He understood me. He even laughed and said, yeah, the weather here changes fast. That was it. A normal conversation. 10 seconds. No applause. No fireworks. But something shifted. I realized I did not need perfect grammar to connect. I needed courage for one more word. That was the beginning of what I now call, I built confidence one word at a time. Not one speech. Not one presentation. Not one magical transformation. One word. If you're watching this because you feel stuck in your English learning journey, let me say something gently. Maybe you're not bad at English. Maybe you're just afraid of sounding imperfect. In the United States, especially in diverse cities, millions of people speak English with accents. Confidence here is not about sounding native. It's about being understood and being real. Working in America taught me something powerful. In meetings, the people who spoke most confidently were not always the most grammatically perfect. They were the ones who expressed ideas clearly and simply. Clear beats complex. Always. So that Tuesday, sitting in my car after work, I didn't pack my suitcase. Instead, I made a small promise. Tomorrow, I will add one more word. Not a paragraph. Not a speech. One word. Science supports this approach. Behavioral psychology shows that small, consistent actions create identity change. When you take tiny brave steps daily, your brain rewires itself. Neuroplasticity is not dramatic. It is repetitive. The brain strengthens what you practice. If you practice silence, you become more silent. If you practice one extra word, you become slightly braver. That day I almost gave up became the day I changed direction. Not because everything improved immediately. It didn't. I still felt nervous. I still made mistakes. I still said sorry, can you repeat that? Many times. But I stopped measuring progress by perfection. I started measuring it by participation. And here's the question I want you to sit with right now, especially if you're learning English through real stories like this. What small step can you take today? Not next month. Not when your grammar is perfect. Today. Maybe it's sending one voice message in English. Maybe it's reading one paragraph out loud. Maybe it's adding one more word to your next conversation. Confidence does not arrive. It accumulates. That Tuesday in America, in a quiet parking lot, I didn't become fluent. I became slightly braver. And sometimes, that is the real beginning. A new life, a silent version of me. Imagine moving to a country where your personality shrinks. Not because you changed. Not because you lost your intelligence. But because you lost your words. That was my second month living and working in the United States. On the outside, my life looked exciting. New job. New city. New climate. New opportunities. If someone searched starting a new life in America 2026 or working in the US as an immigrant, my story would fit perfectly into that hopeful category. But inside, I felt like I had pressed a mute button on myself. In my home country, I was expressive. I joked. I debated. I told stories with energy. In English, I became quiet, careful, calculated. I spoke only when necessary. I filtered every sentence before it left my mouth. If you're practicing English listening and speaking right now, you might recognize this version of yourself. The smaller version. The safe version. My first winter in America made that feeling even stronger. The climate shocked me. The cold air felt sharper than anything I had experienced before. In some regions of the United States, winter is not just a season, it is an atmosphere. The sky turns gray earlier. People move quickly. Conversations happen indoors. Social energy changes. In warmer cultures, small talk happens outside, at markets, on sidewalks, in open spaces. In my new American city, people drove everywhere. Doors closed quickly. Everyone seemed busy. The weather amplified my silence. At work, I listened more than I spoke. In meetings, ideas moved fast. Colleagues used idioms I had never heard before. Let's circle back. That's a long shot. We're on the same page. I understood the general meaning, but by the time I translated it in my head, the conversation had already moved forward. There is a psychological effect called cognitive load. When your brain uses extra energy to process a second language, it has less space for creativity and spontaneity. That's why speaking English can feel exhausting even if you understand it well. Your brain is multitasking at high speed. By the end of each workday, I wasn't just tired. I was mentally drained. And here's something no one tells you clearly. When you are tired in a second language, your confidence drops faster. One evening, after work, I went to a grocery store. Simple task. Buy milk. Buy bread. Pay. Leave. But even there, cultural differences reminded me that I was new. Self-checkout machines. Friendly cashiers asking, "How's your day going?" Strangers smiling politely but briefly. In America, politeness is efficient. Short. Light. Positive. How are you? Does not always mean a deep conversation. It often means connection in one sentence. But my brain treated every question like an exam. How's your day going? I panicked. Should I say good? Should I explain? Should I mention the weather? Is my grammar correct? So I answered too softly. Too quickly. And walked away replaying the moment. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't just learning English. I was learning how to exist in a different rhythm. American workplace culture values clarity and directness. Say your idea. Support it. Move on. In some cultures, indirect communication is polite. In others, direct communication is respectful. Adjusting to that difference takes emotional energy. And while adjusting, I slowly disappeared. My laughter became quieter. My opinions became shorter. My personality became simplified. I became a functional version of myself. There is research in cross-cultural psychology that explains this. When people move to a new country, they often experience identity shift. You temporarily lose access to parts of yourself because those parts depend on language fluency and cultural familiarity. In simple words, you are still you. But you can't fully show it yet. Understanding this later helped me forgive myself. But at that time, I only felt frustration. One Friday afternoon, during a team discussion, my manager asked for suggestions. I had an idea. A good one. I had thought about it all week. But my mind whispered, your English isn't smooth enough. What if you say it wrong? So I stayed silent. Another colleague suggested something similar minutes later. Everyone nodded. The idea was accepted. The room didn't notice my silence. But I did. That moment hurt more than any grammar mistake. Because it wasn't about vocabulary. It was about voice. That weekend, I walked alone in a nearby park. The winter wind was strong. Trees were bare. The landscape felt honest, nothing hidden, nothing decorated. I asked myself a hard question, am I really quiet? Or am I just afraid? The answer was clear. I wasn't incapable. I was cautious. And caution, when repeated daily, turns into invisibility. So I made a small observation that changed everything. I did not need to become louder overnight. I needed to become slightly more present. Presence is different from perfection. The next Monday, I didn't promise myself to speak perfectly. I promised to speak once. Just once. One comment. One sentence. Even if it was simple. Because here's what living and working in the United States slowly taught me. Confidence in English speaking is not about sounding American. It's about showing up consistently in your own accent, your own rhythm, your own story. In that cold season of my life, I was not failing. I was adapting. And adaptation is quiet before it becomes strong. If you feel like a silent version of yourself right now while learning English, maybe you are not shrinking. Maybe you are rebuilding. Slowly. Word by word. And the silent season? It might just be preparation. One word changed my direction. The shift did not begin with a speech. It began with a word I almost didn't say. By the third month of living and working in the United States, I understood something clearly. Waiting to feel confident before speaking English was like waiting to feel strong before going to the gym. Confidence was not a prerequisite. It was a result. But knowing that intellectually and living it emotionally are two different things. One Tuesday morning, during our weekly team check-in, something small happened. My manager presented a new project timeline. People nodded. Laptops clicked. Coffee cups lifted. The room felt routine, safe, predictable. Then he asked, "Does anyone see potential challenges with this schedule?" Silence. I saw one. Not a big, dramatic problem. Just a practical issue about deadlines overlapping with another department's workflow. I had noticed it the night before while reviewing documents. In my native language, I could have explained it clearly in 30 seconds. In English, it felt like climbing a wall. My brain started its usual pattern: translate, edit, predict mistakes, rehearse pronunciation, imagine embarrassment. Cognitive scientists explain this as performance anxiety linked to working memory overload. When your brain is juggling grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and social judgment at the same time, it has fewer resources left for calm thinking. That pressure feels like danger, even when it isn't. My heart beat faster. And then I remembered my promise: one word more. Not a perfect explanation. Not a flawless paragraph. Just one word more than silence. So instead of waiting to construct a complex sentence, I raised my hand slightly and said, "Concern." The room turned toward me. That single word felt louder than it actually was. My manager nodded. "Okay, tell us more. Tell us more." There it was, the moment that usually scared me. Expansion. Explanation. Exposure. I took a breath and broke my idea into fragments. Timeline, maybe tight. Marketing team, same week launch. Possible delay. Was it smooth English? No. Was it effective communication? Yes. The room grew thoughtful. Someone from marketing responded, "Actually, that's true. We might need an extra week." The conversation continued. The schedule adjusted slightly. And just like that, something invisible changed. No one laughed at my grammar. No one corrected my sentence structure. No one cared that my verbs were simple. They cared about the idea. That meeting lasted 40 minutes. But that one word, concern, redirected my internal story. Until then, I believed confidence would arrive after fluency. That day, I saw that confidence could begin before fluency. There is a principle in behavioral psychology called successive approximation. It means you move toward a goal through small, manageable improvements rather than giant leaps. This principle is often used in habit formation and skill development. Instead of demanding perfect performance, you reward progress. My mistake before moving to America was thinking that real English speaking practice required full sentences, advanced vocabulary, native-like pronunciation. But in real life, especially in American workplaces in 2026, clarity matters more than complexity. Simple English works. Direct English works. Honest English works. After that meeting, I decided to experiment. Every day, I would intentionally add one more word than I felt comfortable saying. If I usually said, good, I would say, good, productive. If I usually said, I agree, I would say, I agree because. If I usually stayed silent, I would say one keyword. This method reduced pressure dramatically. My brain stopped seeing speaking as a performance and started seeing it as participation. Neuroscience supports this shift. When you complete small, achievable actions, your brain releases dopamine, not the dramatic, movie-style excitement dopamine, but a quiet sense of progress. That small chemical reward strengthens the behavior. Repeat it enough times, and it becomes natural. One word became two. Two words became a short sentence. Short sentences became short explanations. And here's something interesting about American professional culture. People appreciate contribution more than perfection. Meetings are built on idea exchange. You are not expected to sound like a news anchor. You are expected to think and respond. That realization changed how I viewed myself. I stopped labeling myself as bad at English. I started labeling myself as in training. Training feels temporary. Bad feels permanent. Language learning experts often emphasize comprehensible output. It means speaking at a level slightly above your comfort zone, not so high that you panic, but not so low that you stay stagnant. That narrow space is where growth happens. One word above silence. That was my zone. At home, I practiced the same principle. Instead of watching English content passively, I paused videos and repeated one sentence. Not 10. 1. Slowly. Clearly. Listening practice became active. Speaking practice became daily. Reading short paragraphs aloud trained my pronunciation muscles. Nothing dramatic. Just repetition. Weeks later, during another meeting, I noticed something surprising. I raised my hand without overthinking. The fear was still there, but it was smaller. Familiar. Manageable. Confidence had not arrived like lightning. It had accumulated like savings. If you are learning English through real stories like mine, maybe you are waiting for a big breakthrough moment. A day when you suddenly speak fluently and feel fearless. That might happen. But more often, confidence grows quietly, built from micro-decisions no one else notices. That single word, concern, did not just change a meeting. It changed my direction. Because from that day forward, I stopped asking, am I fluent enough? I started asking, can I add one more word? And that question was powerful enough to move my entire life forward in America, one small, brave sound at a time. America through my eyes. The first time I truly felt America was not in an airport. It was in the air. Cold, dry, unapologetic winter air that hit my face like reality itself. When people search life in the United States 2026 or cultural differences in America, they usually see skylines, opportunity, diversity, career growth. All of that is true. But what you don't see in photos is how climate, culture, and daily systems quietly reshape you from the inside. Where I live, winter is not decorative. It is serious. The sky turns pale gray at 4:30 p.m. The wind moves with intention. Snow doesn't fall softly like in holiday movies. It accumulates, blocks roads, changes plans. Back home, seasons were gentle transitions. Here, seasons feel like decisions. And that climate difference affected my confidence more than I expected. Research in environmental psychology shows that weather influences mood and energy levels. Reduced sunlight can lower serotonin production, affecting motivation and emotional stability. I didn't know the science at the time. I only knew that on darker days, speaking English felt heavier. Language learning is emotional. When you feel warm and relaxed, your brain processes information more easily. When you feel cold, rushed, or isolated, your nervous system tightens. Tight nervous systems do not produce smooth sentences. So winter became my unexpected teacher. Instead of fighting it, I began observing it. In America, daily life continues regardless of weather. Snowstorm? Offices still open, sometimes remotely, sometimes not. Roads are cleared quickly. Systems are structured. There is policy behind everything. Parking rules. Workplace guidelines. Healthcare forms. Tax documentation. Insurance language. And all of it is in English. Not textbook English. Real-life English. This is something many English learners don't talk about enough. Grammar books teach you verb tenses. Real life in the U.S. teaches you how to read rental agreements, understand workplace benefits, interpret government emails, and navigate public services. The first time I read my health insurance policy, I felt like I was decoding a secret language. Deductible. Copay. Out-of-pocket maximum. Preventive care. I had studied English for years, but this vocabulary was different, practical, technical, adult. I could have felt embarrassed. Instead, I treated it like field research. Because living in America is not just about speaking fluently. It's about understanding systems. Culturally, I also noticed something powerful. Americans value independence early. Teenagers work part-time jobs. Young adults move out. Conversations about credit scores, loans, and career paths start young. There is a strong emphasis on personal responsibility. That cultural rhythm influenced how people communicated at work. Direct. Clear. Time-conscious. In meetings, people say, "Let's get to the point." Not rudely. Efficiently. Back home, conversations sometimes begin with context, relationship, emotional tone. Here, clarity often comes first. At first, I misinterpreted this directness as coldness. It wasn't. It was cultural coding. Cross-cultural communication research explains this through low-context versus high-context cultures. The U.S. is generally low context, meaning messages are explicit, not implied. You say what you mean. You state your position. You clarify expectations. Understanding this changed how I approached English speaking practice. I stopped trying to sound poetic. I started trying to sound clear. Instead of long explanations, I used short, structured sentences. I suggest we adjust the timeline. I have a concern about this deadline. I need clarification on this policy. Simple. Direct. Effective. Outside of work, cultural differences appeared in small social moments. Neighbors smiled but didn't always stop to chat. Friends scheduled coffee a week in advance. Time felt organized. Calendars were respected. Let's plan was more common than let's see. At first, I felt lonely. In my home culture, spontaneity creates connection. In my American city, structure creates stability. So I adapted. I started scheduling social time. I joined a small community group. I attended local events, even when my English felt imperfect. And something interesting happened. When I stopped judging American culture through my old expectations, I started appreciating its strengths. Clear boundaries. Respect for personal space. Equal opportunities to speak in meetings. Systems designed for fairness, even if imperfect. Living here forced me to expand, not just linguistically, but mentally. And expansion is uncomfortable. There were nights I missed familiar humor. Familiar food. Familiar language that flowed without effort. There were days when filling out forms felt like climbing a mountain of vocabulary. But every form I completed was practice. Every weather conversation, cold today, right? Was practice. Every workplace email I wrote carefully was practice. Language was no longer a classroom subject. It was survival. It was participation. It was integration. If you are learning English through real stories like mine, understand this. Fluency is not built only through lessons. It is built through living. Through reading signs. Through asking questions. Through misunderstanding and correcting. America, through my eyes, is not just a country. It is a training ground. The climate tested my emotional resilience. The culture tested my adaptability. The systems tested my vocabulary. And every test, small or big, added another word to my confidence. I didn't become fluent because the weather was comfortable. I became stronger because it wasn't. Sometimes growth feels like winter. Quiet. Slow. Bare. But underneath the surface, something is building. And when spring comes, you realize you are no longer the silent version of yourself. You are someone who survived the cold and learned how to speak clearly in it. Love spoke simple English. Love did not arrive with perfect grammar. It arrived with hesitation and a very simple sentence. By the time this part of my life began, I had already survived my first winter in the United States. I had spoken up in meetings. I had learned to say one more word. On the surface, I looked more stable. More adjusted. More confident. But emotionally, I was still careful. Then one evening, at a small community event in my city, I met someone who would change the direction of my story, not through dramatic romance, but through patient conversation. The room was warm. Soft lights. Casual music. People holding paper cups of coffee. I almost didn't go that night. My English still felt like work. And when your brain works all day in a second language, socializing in that same language can feel like overtime. But growth rarely happens on the couch. We started talking near the snack table. The first question was simple. So, how long have you been in the U.S.? I answered slowly. Almost a year. There was no rush in the conversation. No pressure. No correction. He asked about my job. I explained in short sentences. He listened fully. When I searched for a word, he waited. That small patience felt powerful. Psychologists talk about something called psychological safety. It's the feeling that you can speak without fear of humiliation. In workplaces, it increases innovation. In relationships, it increases vulnerability. That night, I experienced psychological safety in English. I didn't try to impress. I didn't try to sound advanced. I used the vocabulary I had. Present tense. Simple structure. I moved here for work. It was difficult at first. Winter was intense. He laughed gently. Yeah, winter here doesn't play around. There was something beautiful about that exchange. The humor was simple. The language was simple. But the connection was real. For many English learners, there is a hidden fear. What if no one takes me seriously because my English isn't perfect? But here's the truth I learned in that season of my life. Sincerity is louder than syntax. Our conversations continued over the next few weeks. Coffee shops. Walks in the park. Text messages that were short but meaningful. Texting in English was a different challenge. Spoken mistakes disappear. Written mistakes stay visible. I used to reread every message 5 times before pressing send. Should I say I'm excited to see you or I look forward to seeing you? Is this too formal? Too casual? Eventually, I realized something freeing. Communication in relationships is not a grammar exam. It's emotional clarity. Instead of overcomplicating, I chose honesty. I like talking with you. I feel comfortable. Sometimes I'm shy in English. That last sentence changed everything. When I admitted my insecurity directly, it lost power. He responded, "You don't need perfect English. I understand you." Simple. Direct. Reassuring. There is research in relationship psychology showing that vulnerability builds trust faster than performance. When you admit imperfection, you invite authenticity from the other person. And that's exactly what happened. We began sharing stories, not just daily updates, but deeper experiences. Cultural differences became conversations instead of obstacles. He explained American dating culture, direct, clear intentions, open discussions about expectations. I explained how relationships were approached in my home country, more subtle, more gradual, sometimes less verbal. Language became part of our learning, not a barrier. He would gently rephrase my sentences sometimes, not to correct me, but to clarify meaning. For example, I once said, "I feel pressure in my chest when I speak fast." He smiled and said, "You mean nervous?" "Yes. Nervous." That moment was not embarrassing. It was educational. In fact, it improved my listening and speaking more than any textbook exercise. Real English story practice. This is what it looks like in real life. Not memorizing dialogues. Living them. Over time, something surprising happened. My English became more natural around him. Not because I studied harder, but because I relaxed. When the nervous system is calm, language flows better. Studies in second language acquisition confirm this. Lower anxiety leads to improved fluency and comprehension. Emotional comfort accelerates linguistic growth. Love, in this case, reduced my fear. And reduced fear increased my confidence. We talked about family values. About future goals. About what it means to build a life in America long term. Conversations about marriage were not dramatic. They were thoughtful. "What kind of partnership do you want?" he asked one night. I answered slowly. Respect. Teamwork. Patience. Simple words. Strong meaning. I didn't need complex vocabulary to describe commitment. The more we spoke, the more I realized something profound. My English did not need to be perfect to carry love. It only needed to be clear enough to express truth. And truth doesn't require advanced grammar. It requires courage. If you are learning English right now and wondering whether your accent or mistakes will limit your future relationships, professional or personal, let my experience reassure you. Connection is built on presence, not perfection. In America, where cultures blend and accents mix daily, authenticity matters more than flawless pronunciation. Love spoke simple English in my life. And through those simple conversations, I didn't just build a relationship. I built a stronger voice. One honest sentence at a time. When words failed in marriage. No one tells you that love in a second language becomes more complicated after the wedding. Before marriage, conversations feel romantic. Soft. Curious. You talk about dreams, favorite foods, childhood stories. You repeat "I miss you" and "I appreciate you." Simple English works beautifully there. But marriage? Marriage requires negotiation. And negotiation requires vocabulary. After we got married and began building our life together in the United States, the tone of our conversations slowly changed. Not in a bad way. In a real way. Bills had to be discussed. Work schedules had to align. Family visits had to be planned. Long-term goals had to be clarified. Love was still present. But now logistics joined the table. One evening, after a long workday, we argued about something small. Very small. Dishes in the sink. That's how it often starts, right? He said, "You said you would take care of it." I responded quickly, I said maybe. He looked confused. "No, you said you would." In my mind, I had meant flexibility. In his understanding, I had communicated commitment. One word difference. Big emotional impact. In English, modal verbs like will, would, maybe, might carry subtle but powerful meaning. In my native language, tone sometimes softens intention. In American communication culture, clarity is essential. That night, the disagreement was not really about dishes. It was about interpretation. There is research in marital psychology showing that many conflicts are not about major values but about micro-misunderstandings that accumulate over time. When language differences are added, the risk increases. Second language marriages require extra patience. After that argument, I felt discouraged. I thought, I've improved so much at work. Why does English still fail me at home? That thought hurt. Because home is supposed to feel safe. But here's the truth. Emotional conversations activate the brain differently than professional ones. When emotions rise, the logical part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, has less control. In your native language, you can argue smoothly even when emotional. In a second language, emotional intensity reduces vocabulary access. That's exactly what happened. I felt frustrated, but my English shrank again. Instead of explaining my feelings clearly, I repeated simple defensive sentences. That's not what I meant. You misunderstood. It's not fair. Those phrases didn't solve anything. So we paused. Later that evening, when emotions cooled, I tried something different. Instead of defending, I described. I think sometimes I use maybe when I feel unsure, I said slowly. In my culture, it can mean yes, but soft yes. He listened carefully. In my understanding, maybe means probably no. There it was. Not a personality clash. A linguistic gap. We both laughed lightly, not because it was funny, but because it was human. From that moment, we created a small rule in our marriage: clarify intention. If something sounds unclear, ask. If something feels ambiguous, explain. This small adjustment changed everything. Research from the Gottman Institute, which studies long-term successful marriages in the U.S., emphasizes something called repair attempts. These are small actions that reduce tension during or after conflict. Clarifying language became our repair attempt. Instead of saying, "You never listen," I learned to say, "I feel unheard when." Instead of saying, "You're wrong," he would say, "Help me understand." Notice the difference. Language shapes emotion. As I practiced expressing feelings more precisely, my English grew deeper, not just wider. Before marriage, I had focused on vocabulary for work, deadlines, strategy, reports, timelines. Marriage forced me to learn emotional vocabulary: overwhelmed, disappointed, supported, appreciated, uncertain. These words changed how I saw myself. Because confidence is not only public. It is relational. Living and loving in America taught me something powerful. Communication is a skill that grows through friction, not comfort. There were other moments too. Discussing finances. Planning future children. Balancing two cultural traditions in one household. Sometimes I needed extra time to form sentences. Sometimes I asked him to slow down. Sometimes I said, "Can we talk about this tomorrow? I need to think in English." And that honesty strengthened our bond. Instead of hiding my limitations, I included him in the process. That vulnerability created teamwork. If you are learning English and afraid it will affect your relationships, hear this clearly. Perfection is not required for partnership. Clarity is. And clarity can be built. In American culture, open communication in marriage is often encouraged directly. Couples discuss expectations early. They verbalize needs. That directness used to intimidate me. Now, it empowers me. Because every time I choose to explain instead of withdraw, I am building two things at once. A stronger marriage. A stronger voice. There will always be moments when words fail. The goal is not to eliminate those moments. The goal is to repair them. One honest sentence at a time. And in those repaired moments, confidence grows, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Like a relationship that survives misunderstanding and becomes stronger because of it. Working in a second language. The first time I had to lead part of a meeting in English, I didn't feel ready. Not because I didn't understand the project. Not because I lacked experience. But because leading means speaking longer than one word. Up until that point, I had mastered something small but powerful, contributing. Short comments. Clear concerns. Simple suggestions. That strategy helped me build confidence one word at a time. But leadership? That required sentences that lasted more than 10 seconds. Living and working in the United States in 2026 means adapting to a workplace culture that values initiative. In many American companies, you are encouraged to speak up, share ideas, challenge assumptions respectfully. Silence is often interpreted as agreement, or lack of engagement. That cultural expectation forced me into growth. One Monday morning, my manager said, "Can you walk the team through your analysis this week?" Walk the team through. 4 simple words. Heavy responsibility. I nodded. Calm face. Racing heart. All week, I prepared. Not just content. Language. I practiced transitions aloud in my apartment. First, I'd like to highlight. Second, we noticed. One possible improvement is. These were not advanced phrases. They were structured phrases. Structure became my secret weapon. There's research in communication psychology showing that when you use predictable structures, listeners process information more easily. Structure reduces cognitive load, for you and for them. So instead of trying to sound impressive, I aimed to sound organized. The day of the meeting arrived. I stood at the front of the room, laptop connected to the screen. My accent was still there. My nerves were still there. But I remembered something important. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to proceed anyway. I began slowly. Today, I'll share 3 key observations. Pause. Breathe. Slide 1. As I spoke, something interesting happened. My fear did not disappear, but it stabilized. Like background noise instead of a siren. When I forgot a word, I rephrased. Instead of searching for inefficient allocation, I said, not the best use of time. Instead of significant fluctuation, I said, big change. Simple English. Clear meaning. And no one interrupted me to correct grammar. In fact, they asked questions. Engaged questions. That moment taught me a professional truth about working in America. Clarity builds credibility faster than complexity. After the meeting, a colleague said, "Nice job. Very clear explanation. Not nice accent. Not your grammar was perfect. Clear explanation." That compliment mattered more than any vocabulary test score. But it wasn't always smooth. There were still days when I misunderstood fast conversations in group settings. American workplace humor can be subtle. Sarcasm can appear without warning. Cultural references move quickly. At lunch once, coworkers were discussing a popular TV show. I didn't recognize the references. I smiled politely but felt excluded. That familiar shrinking feeling returned for a moment. But this time, I didn't retreat. I asked, "What's that show about?" Simple question. Small risk. They explained. I listened. I learned. Integration is not automatic. It's participatory. In U.S. professional culture, curiosity is respected. Asking questions is not weakness. It signals engagement. That realization helped me stop pretending I understood everything. Pretending creates distance. Asking creates connection. Over time, I also noticed something about email communication in American workplaces. Messages are often concise, direct, and action-oriented. Please review by Friday. Let me know your thoughts. Attached for your reference. At first, I overcomplicated my emails. Long introductions. Excessive politeness. I thought more words meant more professionalism. Then I observed my colleagues. Clear subject line. Short paragraphs. Bullet clarity, even without bullet points. So I adapted. Direct does not mean rude. Concise does not mean cold. This adjustment improved not only my English writing but also my efficiency. Working in a second language is like strength training. Every interaction adds resistance. Some days feel heavy. Some feel lighter. But if you keep showing up, muscles develop. There's neuroscience behind this too. Repeated exposure to challenging tasks builds neural pathways. What once required extreme concentration becomes automatic over time. The brain optimizes for repetition. The first meeting I led felt like climbing a mountain. The fifth felt like hiking a hill. The 10th felt like walking uphill, but confidently. And here's the deeper shift. I stopped separating my professional self and my language learner self. They became the same person. I was no longer someone trying to survive English at work. I was a professional who happened to speak with an accent. That identity shift is powerful. Because identity drives behavior. When you see yourself as capable, you act capable. When you act capable, evidence accumulates. And evidence strengthens identity. If you are learning English for career growth in the United States, or anywhere, remember this. You do not need perfect fluency to contribute meaningfully. You need preparation. You need structure. You need small bravery repeated consistently. The workplace became one of my greatest classrooms. Not because it was easy, but because it demanded participation. And every time I chose to participate instead of hide, I added another layer to my confidence. Not overnight. Not magically. But steadily. One meeting. One sentence. One clear explanation at a time. Small steps, real confidence. Most people think confidence comes from big wins. A promotion. A perfect presentation. A moment where everyone applauds. But living and working in the United States taught me something quieter and far more powerful. Confidence grows from repetition, not recognition. By this point in my journey, I had survived culture shock, improved my communication at work, and learned how to navigate misunderstandings in marriage. From the outside, it looked like steady progress. Inside, however, growth felt slow. There were no dramatic turning points anymore. No single breakthrough day. Just normal routines. Emails. Conversations. Grocery shopping. Family dinners. Small talk about weather. Daily English listening and speaking in real life. And that's when I almost underestimated the power of small steps. In psychology, there's a concept called the aggregation of marginal gains. It suggests that tiny improvements, when repeated consistently, create massive long-term transformation. You improve by 1% every day, not by changing everything at once. That idea changed how I viewed my English learning and personal development. Instead of asking, "Am I fluent yet?" I began asking, "Did I practice courage today?" Some days, courage looked like leading a meeting. Other days, it looked like making a phone call instead of sending an email. Calling customer service in English used to terrify me. No visual cues. No body language. Just voice. Fast voice. Unexpected questions. But one afternoon, when I had to resolve a billing issue, I decided not to avoid it. My heart raced. I rehearsed key phrases. "Hi, I'm calling about. I need clarification on. Could you repeat that more slowly?" These were not advanced expressions. But they were tools. And tools create control. When you have prepared language patterns, anxiety decreases. Cognitive science shows that predictability reduces stress responses. If your brain knows what sentence might come next, it relaxes. The call lasted 10 minutes. I survived. More than that, I handled it. After hanging up, I noticed something subtle but important. My self-image shifted slightly. Not dramatically. But enough. Confidence is often misunderstood as a feeling. In reality, confidence is evidence. Every small completed action becomes proof. And the brain loves proof. When you collect enough small successes, your identity updates. I'm bad at English becomes I'm improving. I'm shy becomes I'm practicing. I can't do this becomes I handled it before. This is neuroplasticity in action. Your brain rewires based on repeated behavior. The more you speak despite fear, the less your nervous system interprets speaking as danger. Small steps regulate fear. And here's something even more interesting. Small steps are sustainable. Big motivation fades. Emotional inspiration fades. But tiny daily habits remain. I started creating micro-routines. Read one short English article aloud each morning. Listen to 5 minutes of a podcast during commute. Add one descriptive word in conversation. Not overwhelming. Not dramatic. Just consistent. Over time, those routines compounded. My listening improved because I stopped trying to understand everything and focused on key words. My speaking improved because I stopped chasing perfect pronunciation and focused on clarity. My confidence improved because I stopped measuring myself against native speakers and started measuring against yesterday's version of me. Living in America amplified this lesson. In a fast-paced environment where everyone seems productive and articulate, comparison is tempting. But comparison is exhausting. Progress is energizing. There were still difficult days. Days when I misunderstood a joke. Days when I felt culturally out of sync. Days when I missed home deeply. But instead of interpreting those moments as failure, I began interpreting them as training. Training builds stamina. And stamina builds confidence. I also noticed something powerful in my marriage during this time. Because I practiced small, clear communication daily, conflicts became shorter. Explanations became easier. Emotional vocabulary expanded naturally. Confidence in language spilled into confidence in relationship. It also spilled into public life. Ordering food felt effortless. Networking events felt manageable. Introducing myself to new people no longer felt like a test. The external world had not changed dramatically. I had. And the change was built from invisible repetition. If you are watching this and feeling impatient with your English speaking progress, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what tiny action can you repeat daily? Not once. Not when motivated. Daily. Because confidence is not a personality trait. It is a practiced pattern. When I look back at my first year living and working in the United States, I don't see one heroic moment. I see dozens of small decisions. Speak once. Ask once. Clarify once. Try again once. That is how real confidence is built. Not in front of an audience, but quietly, consistently, inside ordinary days. And the beautiful part? Small steps are available to you right now. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need one manageable action. Repeated. Until it becomes who you are. The day I realized fluency is a feeling, not a level. There was a quiet afternoon that changed everything for me. No celebration. No certificate. No dramatic moment where someone said, "Wow, your English is perfect." It was just an ordinary day. I was standing in line at a small coffee shop in America. The barista asked, "How's your day going so far?" And without thinking, without translating in my head, without searching for grammar, I answered naturally. We talked for maybe 30 seconds. That was it. But something inside me felt different. For the first time, English didn't feel like a subject. It didn't feel like a test. It didn't feel like something I was trying to survive. It felt like me. If you're learning English right now, especially if you're using slow English listening practice, I want you to hear this carefully. Fluency is not a score. Fluency is not perfect grammar. Fluency is a feeling. For years, I believed fluency meant speaking fast. I thought it meant using big vocabulary words. I thought it meant never making mistakes. But that belief made me anxious. Every time I spoke, I was afraid. Every sentence felt like walking on thin ice. And fear blocks progress. The real turning point in my English learning journey happened when I changed my focus. Instead of asking, "Is this correct?" I started asking, "Can the other person understand me?" That small shift changed everything. When you practice with English listening stories, especially slow and clear ones, your brain begins to recognize patterns naturally. You don't memorize rules. You absorb rhythm. That's why slow English for beginners and intermediate learners works so well. It gives your brain time. It lowers pressure. It builds confidence quietly. Looking back, I realized something important. I didn't become fluent because I studied more grammar. I became fluent because I practiced communication every day. Some days I only practiced 15 minutes. Some days I repeated the same English listening practice story 3 times. Some days I felt stuck. But consistency matters more than motivation. There were moments when I wanted to quit. When I felt embarrassed. When I compared myself to people who spoke faster and sounded more natural. Comparison is dangerous. Your English journey is personal. Maybe you are watching this video because you feel frustrated. Maybe you understand English when you read, but you freeze when you speak. Maybe you're afraid of making mistakes. Let me tell you something honestly. Everyone who speaks English fluently today once felt exactly like that. The difference is not talent. The difference is patience. One powerful habit that helped me was shadowing. I listened to clear American English stories, and I repeated them softly. Not loudly. Not perfectly. Just enough to train my mouth. At first, it felt strange. My pronunciation was slow. My voice sounded different. But slowly, my tongue moved more naturally. My ears caught more details. My confidence grew without me noticing. Another key habit was speaking to myself. Yes, it sounds funny. I described my day in simple English. I talked about what I was cooking. I explained my plans for tomorrow. This daily English speaking practice at home removed fear because there was no audience. When you remove fear, progress accelerates. The biggest lesson I learned in this journey is this. Fluency is emotional comfort. When English stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like communication, that's when you're fluent. You may still make grammar mistakes. You may still forget vocabulary sometimes. You may still speak slowly. But if you can express your thoughts clearly and understand others without panic, you are fluent in the way that truly matters. In 2026, many people are looking for fast results. Speak English in 30 days. Become fluent overnight. Perfect pronunciation instantly. But real language growth is quiet. It happens when you watch videos like this regularly. It happens when you listen to slow English stories for comprehension every week. It happens when you trust the process instead of chasing shortcuts. If I could give you one piece of advice, it would be this. Focus on clarity, not speed. Native speakers don't care if you speak fast. They care if they understand you. Clear, simple English is powerful. And here's something surprising. When you stop trying to sound impressive, you start sounding natural. Confidence does not come from knowing every word. Confidence comes from accepting imperfection. That afternoon in the coffee shop taught me something deeper than language. It taught me that growth is often invisible. For months, I thought I wasn't improving. I felt stuck. But my brain was building connections silently through repetition and listening. If you are practicing with daily English listening exercises, even when you feel no progress, trust that something is happening inside. Language learning is like planting seeds. You water them. You wait. You see nothing. Then one day, something breaks through the surface. That was my coffee shop moment. Maybe your moment will be at work. Maybe during travel. Maybe during a phone call. And when it happens, it will feel small on the outside but huge on the inside. You will realize that English is no longer a wall. It is a bridge. If you've stayed with this story until now, I want you to pause and reflect. How far have you already come? Maybe 6 months ago, you couldn't understand videos like this. Maybe a year ago, you were afraid to speak one sentence. Growth deserves recognition. Keep listening. Keep repeating. Keep speaking gently to yourself. Use slow American English listening practice to train your ears. Use simple daily speaking to train your confidence. Use patience to train your mindset. Fluency is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming comfortable as yourself in another language. And one ordinary day, when you least expect it, you'll realize you're not learning English anymore. You're living it. Why I stopped chasing perfect English. For a long time, I believed something that quietly made my English worse. I believed I had to be perfect before I could be confident. So I waited. I waited until my grammar was stronger. I waited until my pronunciation sounded more American. I waited until I knew enough vocabulary. And while I was waiting, I wasn't speaking. Maybe you understand this feeling. You watch slow English listening practice videos. You study vocabulary. You practice with English listening stories for comprehension. But when it's time to speak, your mind goes blank. Not because you don't know English. Because you're afraid it won't be perfect. That fear is more powerful than any grammar mistake. The day everything changed for me was not dramatic. It was uncomfortable. I was in a small group conversation. Native speakers were talking quickly. I understood about 70%. Normally, I would stay quiet. But that day, I decided to say something simple. Not impressive. Not complex. Just clear. My sentence wasn't perfect. I paused in the middle. I searched for one word. And do you know what happened? Nothing bad. No one laughed. No one corrected me. No one looked confused. They responded naturally. That moment taught me something powerful. Communication is more important than perfection. If you're using slow American English listening practice regularly, you are already building the foundation. Your brain is learning structure. Your ears are adjusting to rhythm. But fluency requires one more step. You must allow yourself to sound imperfect. In 2026, many learners still search for advanced English, native level pronunciation, or speak English like an American fast. These goals are not wrong. But they can become traps. When your goal is perfection, progress feels slow. When your goal is clarity, progress feels real. I started changing how I practiced. Instead of memorizing difficult words, I focused on simple, powerful sentences. Instead of speaking fast, I focused on speaking clearly. Instead of trying to remove my accent completely, I focused on being understood. That shift reduced my anxiety immediately. Here's something important about English listening practice for fluency. Listening trains recognition. Speaking trains courage. You need both. Every time you listen to slow, clear English, your brain builds confidence silently. But if you never speak, that confidence stays hidden. So I created a small daily habit. 5 minutes of speaking out loud. Alone. At home. I described my morning routine. I explained what I learned that day. I summarized an English listening story I had just heard. At first, my sentences were short. I woke up early. I made coffee. I felt tired but motivated. Simple. But simple builds strength. Gradually, my sentences became longer. Not because I forced them to, but because my brain felt safer. Fear shrinks language. Safety expands it. If you feel stuck right now, ask yourself this. Are you practicing to avoid mistakes, or practicing to communicate? There is a difference. When you avoid mistakes, you speak less. When you aim to communicate, you speak more. One of the biggest myths about fluency is that advanced learners don't make errors. They do. They just don't stop when errors happen. That's emotional fluency. Emotional fluency means your confidence stays steady even when your grammar is not perfect. And confidence grows through action, not preparation. If you are watching this as part of your daily English listening routine, I want you to try something new after this video ends. Don't replay it immediately. Instead, summarize it out loud. Use your own words. Slowly. Calmly. Even if you only speak for 1 minute, that minute matters. Because speaking transforms passive knowledge into active ability. Another thing that helped me was accepting my accent. For a long time, I tried to sound exactly like native speakers. I copied intonation perfectly. I analyzed pronunciation deeply. Improving pronunciation is important. Clear speech matters. But trying to erase your identity creates tension. When I stopped fighting my accent and focused on clarity instead, my speech improved naturally. Clarity over imitation. If someone understands you easily, you are communicating successfully. And here's something interesting. When you relax, your pronunciation becomes smoother. Tension creates stiffness in your mouth and voice. Relaxation creates flow. That's why slow English practice for beginners and intermediate learners is so powerful. It reduces stress. It builds rhythm. It trains your ear gently. Fluency is not built in one breakthrough moment. It's built in small brave decisions. Raising your hand. Starting a conversation. Asking a question. Sharing an opinion. Even if your voice shakes a little. There was a time when I thought I needed permission to speak English confidently. A certificate. A higher test score. A compliment from a native speaker. But confidence is self-created. You decide when you are ready. And the truth is, you are ready before you feel ready. If you can understand this story, you already have the foundation. If you can think basic thoughts in English, you already have ability. Now you just need repetition and courage. Keep practicing with slow American English listening stories to train your comprehension. Keep speaking small, simple sentences daily to train your expression. Keep showing up even on days when progress feels invisible. Because progress is often happening quietly. One day, you will notice something surprising. You will speak without planning. You will understand without translating. You will respond without panic. And you will realize something important. You didn't become perfect. You became comfortable. And comfort is real fluency. So stop waiting for perfect English. Start using real English. Slowly. Clearly. Bravely. Your voice does not need to be flawless to be powerful. It just needs to be heard. The silent progress you don't see. There was a period in my English learning journey when I felt completely stuck. I was doing everything right. I watched slow English listening practice videos almost every day. I repeated sentences. I studied vocabulary. I even tried shadowing with clear American English stories. But nothing felt different. My speaking wasn't dramatically better. My confidence wasn't suddenly higher. I still hesitated in conversations. And that frustrated me. Maybe you're in that stage right now. You're consistent. You're serious. You're putting in the time. But the results feel invisible. Here's the truth most learners don't hear. Language growth is often silent. When you practice with English listening stories for comprehension, your brain is building neural connections. It's recognizing patterns. It's adjusting to rhythm, intonation, and sentence structure. But you don't feel that happening. Progress in language is not always emotional. Sometimes it's mechanical and slow. Think about going to the gym. If you lift weights for 1 week, your body doesn't look different. But inside, your muscles are adapting. The same thing happens when you follow a daily slow American English listening routine. At first, everything feels hard. Then it feels familiar. Then one day, it feels natural. But that middle stage, the nothing is changing stage, is the most dangerous. Because that's when many learners quit. I almost quit during that stage. I remember listening to a podcast designed for intermediate English learners. I understood most of it, but not everything. I kept replaying parts. And I thought, why am I still not fluent? That question was the problem. Fluency is not a finish line. It's a direction. Instead of asking, why am I not fluent yet? I started asking, am I more comfortable than last month? That small mindset shift changed how I measured progress. Comfort matters more than perfection. When you use slow English listening practice for fluency, your listening improves first. You begin to catch phrases without translating. You recognize common expressions automatically. But speaking confidence takes longer. Why? Because speaking involves risk. Listening is private. Speaking is public. Listening builds knowledge. Speaking reveals it. That's why it's important to combine both. After each listening session, I began summarizing the story out loud. Just 1 or 2 minutes. No script. No pressure. At first, I struggled. I paused often. I repeated myself. But I noticed something interesting. Each week, my pauses became shorter. My sentences became smoother. My thoughts connected more easily. Not dramatically. Just slightly. Small improvements are easy to ignore. But small improvements repeated daily become transformation. In 2026, many learners are surrounded by fast content. Quick tips. Instant hacks. Become fluent in 30 days. But real language mastery comes from boring consistency. It comes from watching slow English stories for daily practice even when you're tired. It comes from repeating simple phrases until they feel automatic. It comes from speaking even when your voice feels unsure. There's another reason progress feels invisible. Your standards rise as you improve. 6 months ago, understanding 50% of a video felt amazing. Now you understand 80%, but you focus on the missing 20%. Growth changes your expectations. So sometimes, feeling stuck is actually a sign that you've improved. You're noticing more details. You're aware of subtleties. You're aiming higher. That's not failure. That's development. One powerful technique that helped me during this silent stage was recording myself speaking. At first, I hated it. I noticed every mistake, every unnatural pause, every pronunciation weakness. But after 3 months, I listened to an old recording. And I was shocked. My rhythm was better. My pronunciation was clearer. My confidence sounded stronger. The change had been happening quietly. If you're practicing with slow American English listening for beginners and intermediate learners, consider tracking your journey. Record short summaries once a month. Write short reflections in English. Notice how your thinking speed changes. Evidence builds motivation. And motivation keeps you consistent. There's something else I want you to understand. Feeling slow does not mean you're slow. Language acquisition happens differently for everyone. Some people speak early and make many mistakes. Others listen longer and speak later with more stability. Both paths are valid. What matters is sustainability. Can you continue practicing next week? Can you continue next month? That's the real question. Fluency is not built in emotional excitement. It's built in calm repetition. There was a moment when I realized I wasn't translating in my head anymore during simple conversations. It wasn't dramatic. No music playing in the background. No applause. Just a normal interaction where my brain responded naturally. That's how silent progress reveals itself. Not as fireworks, but as ease. If you are watching this as part of your daily English listening practice routine, I want you to trust something. If you show up consistently, improvement is inevitable. It may not happen on your schedule. It may not look impressive on social media. But it will happen. Your brain is adapting every time you listen carefully. Your pronunciation is improving every time you repeat slowly. Your confidence is growing every time you choose not to quit. So if today feels ordinary, good. Ordinary practice builds extraordinary results. Keep using Slow English Listening Practice 2026 methods. Keep focusing on clarity over speed. Keep speaking simple sentences with courage. One day soon, you'll look back and realize the progress you couldn't see was shaping the fluency you now feel. And you'll understand something powerful. Growth was never missing. It was just happening quietly. The confidence shift that changed my English forever. There was a time when I believed confidence would come after fluency. I thought, when my English is good enough, then I will feel confident. So I waited. I kept practicing with Slow English Listening Practice videos. I followed clear American English stories for comprehension. I repeated phrases quietly at home. But inside, I still felt small when speaking. One day, something unexpected happened. I was asked a simple question during a group discussion. What do you think about this idea? My heart beat faster. Usually, I would say, "I'm not sure," and stay quiet. But that day, I tried something different. Instead of thinking about grammar, instead of searching for advanced vocabulary, I focused on one thing: clarity. I took a breath and answered in simple English. My sentences were not complex. My pronunciation was not perfect. I paused once to find a word. But I finished my thought. And people listened. That moment changed everything. Not because my English suddenly became advanced, but because I realized confidence is a decision, not a reward. If you are practicing with slow American English listening for fluency, you are already building skill. But skill alone does not create confidence. Action creates confidence. In 2026, many learners are still chasing perfect English. They want native-level pronunciation. They want zero mistakes. They want fast, impressive speech. But real communication does not require perfection. It requires presence. When you focus too much on being correct, you disconnect from the conversation. You become trapped inside your own thoughts. But when you focus on expressing meaning, something changes. You relax. And when you relax, your English improves naturally. That was the shift for me. Instead of asking, "Is this sentence perfect?" I started asking, "Does this sentence communicate my idea?" This mindset works especially well if you practice with English listening stories for beginners and intermediate learners. Those stories train your ear. They build natural rhythm. They show you how simple English can be powerful. You don't need complicated vocabulary to sound confident. You need steady delivery. One habit that helped me strengthen this confidence was speaking more slowly. Yes, slowly. At first, I felt embarrassed speaking at a slower pace. I thought people would think I wasn't fluent. But speaking slowly gave me control. It allowed me to think clearly. It improved my pronunciation. It reduced filler words. Clarity increased. Anxiety decreased. If you're following a daily slow English listening practice routine, try matching your speaking speed to the videos you watch. Notice how calm, clear speech feels stronger than rushed speech. There is power in calm communication. Another important lesson I learned was this. Confidence grows through repetition in real situations. Listening at home is safe. Repeating sentences alone is safe. But growth accelerates when you use English in small, real interactions. Ordering food. Asking for directions. Sharing an opinion in class. Sending a voice message. Small risks build big confidence over time. You don't need dramatic conversations. You need consistent ones. One of the biggest mental barriers I had was fear of judgment. I imagined people analyzing my grammar. I imagined them noticing my accent. But in reality, most people are focused on their own thoughts. They care about understanding you, not grading you. When I realized this, I stopped trying to sound impressive. And interestingly, that made me sound more natural. When you let go of performance, communication becomes smoother. This is why combining slow English listening practice 2026 methods with real speaking attempts is so effective. Listening builds familiarity. Speaking builds courage. Courage builds confidence. And confidence reinforces fluency. It becomes a cycle. There's something else I want you to hear clearly. You are allowed to speak English before you feel ready. Many learners delay speaking because they think they need more preparation. But preparation without action creates hesitation. You will never feel 100% ready. Confidence comes after you speak, not before. If you can understand this story right now, you already have enough knowledge to communicate basic ideas. Start there. Use simple structures. I think. In my opinion. I agree because. I learned that. These phrases are powerful because they help you express complete thoughts. When I began focusing on expressing complete thoughts instead of perfect sentences, my conversations improved immediately. People respond to ideas, not grammar accuracy percentages. And here's something encouraging. Every time you speak despite fear, your brain learns that it is safe. Fear decreases. Stability increases. Your voice becomes stronger. Over time, you won't even remember the moment when speaking felt scary. It will feel normal. That's the confidence shift. If you are watching this as part of your English listening practice for long-term fluency, I want you to try something today. After this video ends, speak for 2 minutes about what you learned. Don't plan too much. Don't write a script. Just speak slowly and clearly. Even if you hesitate. Especially if you hesitate. Because confidence is built in those moments. Fluency is not a destination you reach and then celebrate. It's a comfort level you gradually enter. And comfort comes from showing up, again and again. Keep listening to slow American English stories to strengthen your comprehension. Keep speaking small, simple sentences to strengthen your confidence. Keep choosing clarity over perfection. One day soon, you'll notice something powerful. You're not trying to sound confident anymore. You just are. And that quiet confidence will change your English forever.
If you've listened this far, something inside you is already changing. Not because of one video. Not because of one technique. But because you are choosing consistency. Real English fluency in 2026 is not about speaking fast. It's not about sounding perfect. It's about understanding clearly and expressing yourself with calm confidence. Every time you practice with slow English listening practice, you are training your brain to think in English naturally. Every time you repeat a sentence, you are strengthening your pronunciation. Every time you speak, even imperfectly, you are building real communication power. And here's the part most learners don't realize. One day, without warning, English will feel lighter. You'll understand without translating. You'll respond without panic. You'll speak without overthinking. That day won't be dramatic. But it will be unforgettable. So don't stop now. If this slow American English listening story helped you, imagine what consistent daily practice can do in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. This channel is designed to help you improve English listening comprehension naturally. Build confident English speaking skills step by step.
Practice with clear, slow American English stories.
Develop long-term fluency without stress. If you're serious about improving your English in 2026, make this part of your daily routine. Subscribe to the channel.
Turn on notifications so you never miss a new English listening practice video.
Comment below, how many minutes will you practice English tomorrow? Your journey is not random. It's built one calm, focused session at a time. And the next breakthrough? It might be waiting in the very next video.
يلال سيودير.